You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. It has been a couple weeks. We've had some sinus stuff we're getting over. We had Thanksgiving and some difficulty with scheduling, but we are back. And man, did we pick a good week to be back, Graham, because we're recapping an incredible rivalry weekend, and we're going to dive into all the big storylines from this past weekend. A little bit of coaching news off the top with Texas A&M. They fired Jimbo. We hadn't had a podcast since then, but now they have hired Duke head coach, or former Duke head coach, Mike Elko. We're going to give our brief reactions to that, talk briefly about Michigan, Ohio State, and then dive right into the Iron Bowl, which was one for the ages. But before we get into any of that, few quick programming reminders. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at the Pigskin Cafe if you haven't already. Leave us a like on the video, leave us a comment, hit that notification bell, and follow us on social media. We appreciate each and every one of you. And man, what a great college football season this has been and continues to be. Graham, before we dive into the games, I mentioned it off the top. Jimbo out at A&M. I think we both agree it was time. He was the definition of mediocre, definition of stubborn, not willing to change, not willing to adapt. And, I mean, it's been 10 years since he won a national championship, and he had a transcendent quarterback to do it. And I think that and that alone has really put more shine on his name and given him a longer leash than it would for other coaches. So he's out. They hire Mark Stoops for maybe a 10-hour period, and then they say, oh, no, the backlash is too much. So they go and hire a very similar version of him, in my opinion, in Mike Elko. I'll give my brief thoughts off the top, kick it to you, and then we'll move on. I think Mike Elko is a solid hire. Don't think it's a home run. I don't think it's very flashy. But sometimes flashy, it doesn't mean it's always the best. I think Elko, in his first year at Duke, proved that he can coach, that he can build a culture, that he can reinvigorate a program that really isn't known for football. I mean, Duke is obviously known for basketball. That is the lifeblood of that university. But he put a product on the field that made Duke fans proud. And this year, obviously, was more difficult. Riley Leonard was banged up all year with that high ankle sprain, and they really, they struggled down the stretch. But they also had glimmers of a really good team. I mean, they should have beat Notre Dame if they hadn't have called a prevent defense on 4th and 16. They had FSU on the ropes before Riley Leonard got hurt again. I mean, they were very, very competitive. They beat Clemson to begin the year. So I think the guy knows how to coach. I think that is not in doubt. But I'm kind of my reservations are recruiting, obviously. I think he'll be able to recruit at A&M just because of the money and the NIL fund that is there. That in and of itself is going to be able to kind of help with recruiting. But the other thing is offensive scheme. I think at Duke he kind of ran a scheme that was more conservative, a little more traditional. I mean, it had spread elements to it, but I would not say it was an innovative, exciting, high-flying offense. And I don't think he can do that at A&M. I think he's going to have to be able to adapt, evolve, do what Jimbo did not. I think they're going to field a good defense. He's a great defensive mind. But now his biggest job, keep as much of the talent that is on that roster there. That is priority number one, along with hiring a good staff. But overall, solid hire, but not a fantastic hire. And I think they had the opportunity to do that if they could have swayed a big name to come from another school, or maybe with an outside-the-box hire. I think everyone kind of, when the job came open, Elko was one of the first things mentioned. and so they landed their guy. But that's kind of my thoughts on it, Graham. What do you think?
Yeah, pleasure joining you again. It has been a hot minute since we've joined together on the podcast. I enjoyed doing it. Just talking through some college football action. It's a big passion of ours, and just to express it, out in the air makes it even better. Mike Elko, new coach at Texas A&M, Hampton. I agree with you. I think that when you look at it, I think he's the safe hire, which in certain situations I think that it is acceptable for the safe hire to be, the guy you go with. But it is interesting because I feel like A&M with Jimbo Fisher, I mean, it was mediocre, consistently mediocre. But I think that whenever they fired Jimbo, that you wouldn't make such an expensive and large decision without something already sort of lined up or eye on somebody, knowing that you can poach them from somewhere. I like Mike Elko as a coach. I think he did a fantastic job at Duke in the sense of he took guys that he did not recruit that were playing for a mediocre David Cutcliffe coach team at Duke. It's nothing against Cutcliffe. It's just the consistent performance he had the last few years at Duke. Anyway, he took those guys and developed them into 9-3, 9-3 last year, 7-3 players, 7-5 players this year, and your best player gets hurt and it stays hurt throughout the year. I think the development side is what A&M has missed since Mike Elko left, was the taking the guys that you were able to buy with NIL and with Jimbo recruiting, taking them, developing them into game-changing playmakers. When you look at A&M's roster, they're loaded with talented players. Evan Stewart on offense, Walter Nolan on defense. I mean, they've got two of the best players in the country. And will they be able to take the next step? Will they have that coaching to do so? I think that Mike Elko has a tough job on his hands. And to me, I think that the defense will be, very stout. I think that he will be able to coach them, game plan for them, and help get them right. But the question mark will be the offense. What offense will he attempt to deploy at A&M? Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? What's that going to look like? And then ultimately bring weapons back in. I think keeping the guys there, bringing more weapons in to help A&M be successful. I think this is an really interesting year for coaching changes, in the sense of the value of teams right now could be completely different than the value of teams in 2 years whenever the conference realignments all happen. We're not really going to talk about it, but Mississippi State hiring Jeff Lebby, I think it was so important for them to try and swing for the fences for a guy like Jeff Lebby this year, because if you did not attempt the home run this year, in 2 years you could be in the same conversation with Vanderbilt, with a Kentucky of years past sort of team, where they're very much irrelevant to the conference. And I think for A&M, they knew that they had to get somebody in. They had to get somebody in early so that this recruiting cycle that ends in middle of December, they'll be able to be set up and be ready to be successful for the SEC next year, now having to compete with Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. I think it's a good hire, not a great hire. I think it is, my last thing I'll say, I think that I said it about Mark Stoops, and I also think it's true about Mike Elko. I think that he's a very good coach. I don't think he will be at the level that A&M will desire in 3 years. I don't think he has that championship pedigree, at his back. I think that I think I like the hire of Elko better than Mark Stoops, in the simple fact of Elko is 2 years on the job, Mark Stoops is 10 years on the job. Mike Elko could still be building up. He still is learning. He still is progressing, and he still could be that. I just don't see, from what I've seen, I just don't know if he has what it takes to take A&M to the level in which they are paying him and expecting him to take them to. But for Mike Elko, big decision. I think I saw where his annual salary to start off with was $7 million a year. So I'm sure a big coming from Duke, and it'll be fun to watch A&M. Just see what they do the next few years, because I think this is their chance to try and get it right. They have money behind them. They have opportunities in front of them. What will they do going forward?
I agree with all that, Graham. But before we kind of move on, you mentioned Jeff Lebby. I think that is a great hire by Mississippi State. Could potentially be like when they hired Dan Mullen. I think it's got that kind of vibe, and I think him and Kiffin, that rivalry with him formerly being on Kiffin's staff, I think that could be a ton of fun. So glad you mentioned that. Really, really proud of Mississippi State. I think they got a good one in Jeff Lebby. I'm gonna call an audible, Graham. I know we talked pre-show that we're going to do Michigan, Ohio State, and then go in the Iron Bowl. I think we need to get in the Iron Bowl. I think our listeners are ready for it. And full disclosure, I usually try to be very objective on this show as best as I can without being a homer. But I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're an Auburn fan, just get ready, because the homer cap, the Bama glasses are coming on, because what I witnessed Saturday was absolutely life-changing. Maybe not that far, but I have never, not even for 2nd and 26, I have never watched a sporting event where I thought so clearly that Alabama was going to lose, and I felt like I was at the bottom. When Jalen Milroe crossed the line of scrimmage and then came back and threw it, I was dejected. I was mad at him. I was contemplating why our season was about to go up in flames. But then 4th and 31 happened. Then the nightmare at Jordan Hare happened. Then the disaster in the pasture happened. Then the grave digger happened, because Isaiah Bond and Jalen Milroe put Auburn and all 87,000 of those fans to sleep. And I could not believe what I had seen. I got up, said, he caught it, and ran around the living room like a little kid and was pure giddy the rest of the night at Alabama and Jalen Milroe coming up in the clutch, stealing victory from the jaws of defeat, and arguably the biggest play in Iron Bowl history on the 10th anniversary of the biggest play in Iron Bowl history for Auburn fans in the kick six. I mean, what an anniversary gift that Alabama could give to Auburn on that day when they had their little pop-up stands and their little commemorative cups for the kick six. That was just a beautiful way that when the game ended and Auburn fans were leaving the stadium, they could visit their little pop-up tent and get their commemorative stuff, because they weren't going to be celebrating a win on Saturday night in Jordan Hare. A lot went wrong for Alabama in that game. I mean, the run defense was putrid, gave up over 250 yards to Auburn on the ground with no threat of a passing game. You had some inexplicable decisions by Jalen Milroe. I mean, I've never seen a quarterback throw the ball past the line of scrimmage twice in a game. I've never seen both quarterbacks do it in the same game, but that happened on Saturday. The muffed punt was massive. Usually that play does not go Alabama's way in Jordan Hare, but on Saturday it did. Alabama took advantage. Credit to Tommy Reese. I thought he called an outstanding game. I thought the play design on the Gravedigger play, on the 4th and 31 play, was really, really innovative, really, really good. Thought the 4th and 1 play call where they tossed the ball to Roy Dell was a great play design. Everybody thought they were sneaking, and they checked to the sideline. They audibled to that toss play, but the way they had it designed, they had Jam Miller, instead of him going this way, he went another way to take some Auburn defenders kind of away from where the play was going. Another great design by Tommy Reese. And in the end, Jalen Milroe, I thought at times the moment was too big for him in that fourth quarter. He did not play well. But when it mattered on that final play, I mean, that was like a 40 to 50-yard dime in the back of the end zone. And as Chris Stewart said, if you went to church the next morning, you better have sat in the back left because that's where the blessings come down. Incredible. That game, I mean, the Iron Bowl is already the best rivalry in college football, not just because we grew up watching it. It delivers gem after gem after gem. You can tell me about the game, and we're going to talk briefly about Ohio State, Michigan. That game cannot hold the Iron Bowl's jock. The Iron Bowl is so much better. It delivers each and every year almost, especially when played in Jordan Hare. And I'm just happy that for once, Alabama came out on top and had a miracle of its own. And now they're on a collision course with Georgia in Atlanta for a chance to be in the college football playoff. What a game. What a story. What a sport. College football delivers once again. Mr. Graham Haney, what did you think of the game from an emotional perspective? You can break it down X's and O's wise if you want, even though that's not as fun in a game like this. Just take it, let it wash over you. Wherever you want to go with it.
So I just want to tell you on the roller coaster that I went on Saturday. Was in Tuscaloosa for a family friend occasion need to be at. So watched the first half of the Iron Bowl on TV, got in the car, then halftime, listened to Eli Gold call a gem of the last two quarters, a gem, because Eli Gold is the best in the business. However, this was not his best performance. So,
hold on, before you go on, there are two of my friends that I said after the call at the end of the game, I'm like, it's time for Chris Stewart. I love Eli. I'm thankful for what he did. You would have thought that I blasphemed our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ by saying that. So continue. I'm sure I'm going to hear from them after this.
Eli Gold is the best in the business and has been for a very long time. However, in the middle of nowhere, just backwoods Alabama, listening to the Alabama Crimson Tide Sports Radio Network, you get down, you hear the snap over the head. Okay, 4th and 31. The ball is thrown up, and Eli Gold's commentating of the event. He throws in the back left corner. Milroe throws in the back left corner, and is caught. You would have thought, I mean, okay, so, and I'm sure I'm exaggerating this, but my father probably attest that he heard the same thing. He said he caught it, and you would have thought there was a year in between he caught it, the description of what he caught. Okay, for a touchdown, short of the goal line, was it in play, out of play? Alabama guy catch it? Who is he, and what did they catch, and where was it? So he said he caught it, and it was in very much of a, not monotone, but just he caught it. Not a monumental call like it could have been and should have been for the biggest play from Alabama's perspective in the Iron Bowl. I mean, probably ever, but if not, from at least the last two decades. I think that from that perspective, the anticipation built up, and your heart was just so low that Alabama was going to lose, especially with the snap over the head. And then you were so you were so much in purgatory of, am I there? Are we there? Are we not there? Where are we going? And then, I mean, he was raised from the dead, and the blessing flowed down, and he caught it in the back left corner of the end zone. I mean, what a play, what a day. I mean, for Alabama's sake, the luck never goes our way. And for those that aren't fans, they're going to say, you're crazy. Alabama always gets luck. Everybody picks Alabama. Name an event, name a play where Alabama got the benefit of not only the doubt, but the benefit of all the luck on one play. It's always against Alabama. The 10-year anniversary of the kick six. Okay, playing against Ole Miss at home 2 years in a row, and the tip ball out of nowhere straight into the Mississippi Ole Miss players' hands. I mean, you just look at time after time after time, the luck goes against Alabama, if anything. And the luck usually goes in favor of Auburn. It felt really good to be lucky instead of good this past week, because if you were relying on good, you were disappointed. If you're relying on luck, don't bet on it, but you won big. I think that the Iron Bowl, it is what it is. It's a competitive game. Hampton, like you said, I totally agree. The best rivalry in all of college football, if not all of the just sports in general, and just the deliverance of game after game after game. And I mean, you look at it, just the only times that the Iron Bowl is not competitive is when a coach is fired and there's a big decision that's being made and a change is happening. Because if you look, you take those years out of it, those 3-4 years out of the past 10, every single game has been so close and has been a few plays away from going the complete opposite direction. But I'll say this as the last point, and then we can move on. It feels good to be a member and to be a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, I felt like we rolled the stone away and glory had come to earth. It was big. And for all of the Bammers out there, roll Tide. For all the Auburn fans out there that have said, we didn't think we had a team that had much depth. We didn't think we didn't think it had a team that was very good coming off of a really bad loss to Mexico State. Okay, I mean, credit to Hugh Freeze, he got the guys ready to play. But if you can't get hyped up and ready to play against your rival in your Super Bowl of all Super Bowls of the year, you have no team. You have no hope. So I will say this, and it's not to like really dig at Auburn fans in general. It's just the simple fact of you were surprised that the game was close. From an Alabama perspective, Alabama's a significantly better football team than Auburn by everybody's like point of view. But we all knew that it would be a fairly close game because it's the Iron Bowl and because it was in Auburn. So, great day to be a member of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Hope that it rolls over into this week and we can find ourselves a way into the college football playoff.
It was great, Graham. Loved your reaction. A few quick things, and then we'll move on, and then we'll get out of here. With the Eli Gold call, I know my friends, and I'll name drop them, Austin and Josh. Love y'all both. Roll Tide to you both. But with the Eli Gold call, the only thing that saved it is Tyler Watts at the very end saying, they're reviewing it, but there's nothing to review, and there's 87,000 people here that are in utter disbelief, and I love it. That is what saved the call. But if Chris Stewart had called that, it would have been an all-timer. It would have given you chills, made you feel things all over. Eli Gold was like a wet blanket on top. It was just, I love him. God bless him. Hope you retire this year. You've earned a nice long retirement. I listened to the Auburn call. Andy Burcham almost sounded more excited than Eli Gold did for the play that happened, and it was his team on the other end of it. I'm totally with you. I love Eli, but it's time. It's time. Chris Stewart, step on up. The other two things I want to mention. The other best part of the game were the reaction shots of all the Auburn sorority girls crying their eyes out, doing the swag surf, like Mike Elko did in his press conference. But these were tears of sadness, and there was just some pretty good reaction shots. And I know he's not listening, but John Stephen kept sending me like shot after shot after shot of just people in distress. And it was so funny. And the last thing that I'll say, I know a lot of Auburn fans have said what you have said. Oh, we didn't expect to win, and we lost to New Mexico State, but we showed up for the Iron Bowl. What team fans do not show up for a big rivalry game? Hence, all of them. But the other thing is, this is the worst roster Hugh's going to have. You better watch out. He's coming. I recall in 2021 when the same thing happened. Auburn almost beat an Alabama team that was significantly superior than them. And people said, oh, you better watch out. Brian Harson's coming. Let's not put the cart before the horse, everyone. Let's see how it plays out. I know Hugh's recruiting well. I'm sure they'll put a better product on the field than what it was this year. Let's just let it play out before we start making bold declarations of we coming like we're Ed Orgeron in 2019. But I digress. Let's move on. Roll Tide, great win. And I apologize for the excessive bammering that happened, but it just had to come out. Lastly, we'll talk about Ohio State, Michigan. There were a bunch of other games throughout the weekend that we could discuss, but none of them really had a huge impact on the college football playoff or the landscape as a whole. Had a few close calls, Washington, Wazoo, Florida State, but nothing came to fruition. But this game basically eliminated Ohio State from the playoff. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this game, Graham, because honestly, it was a close game. It was such a boring game. Quarterback play in the Big Ten is so weak. J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord would be mid-tier quarterbacks in the SEC. I feel like both teams had pretty good defenses, but ultimately, when the game was on the line, Michigan just bullied Ohio State. I mean, they held the ball for 7 or 8 minutes, went right down the field on them, and that really was the change of the game. And then Ryan Day coaching scared in a big game. Once again, you have a couple opportunities to go for it on fourth down. Instead, you kick a 50-yard field goal that you ultimately miss. You lose by 6. I would have definitely gone for it there. There are a couple other instances through the game where he could have been more aggressive and played to win instead of playing very conservative. And ultimately, in a game like that, you kind of have to be, when you're evenly matched, you have to be aggressive to the fault. You have to make some coaching decisions that get momentum and get leverage and advantage in your favor. And he just did not do that on Saturday. And I think it's been kind of a theme time and time again. I think the calls to fire him are absurd. Jim Harbaugh was 0-5 versus Ohio State before 2021. Now he's won 3 straight, and they're about to go to 3 straight college football playoffs. So everyone needs to calm down, pump the brakes on all that nonsense of him getting fired. But it's not a good look. He's got too much talent. I mean, last year, we see what C.J. Stroud's doing in the NFL right now. They should not have lost to Michigan last year when you have C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison and all those weapons out wide. So Michigan ekes out another one. I think they're the more physical team. But ultimately, I think both teams were pretty evenly matched in what was kind of a boring football game. It was a very Big Ten football game. Graham, quickly, what were your thoughts on the game that was ultimately just another close but kind of uninspiring game, in my opinion?
So when you look at it, I think that Michigan was the more dominant team. I mean, more physical on both sides of the ball. Ohio State, Hampton, like you said, played scared. I think that the best player on the field was Marvin Harrison Jr., but who was the worst player on the field in the sense of who could you not trust who could you trust the least is Kyle McCord. I think that connection was the problem and was Ohio State's downfall in the game is we can't connect getting the ball to our best player with position to make plays in open field. I think that part of that is on Ryan Day, also on Kyle McCord. Like we talked about earlier in the year against Notre Dame, against all these other games, that if Kyle McCord plays bad, Ohio State will lose. When you look at it, Kyle McCord did not play good. They lost. If Kyle McCord plays good or great, Ohio State has all opportunity to win that football game. But credit to Michigan. They take care of business at the big house and have really just taken control over that rivalry where it was skewed so much to Ohio State, now back in Michigan's favor. You kind of enjoy seeing it, but man, I just think the Big Ten, I agree with you. It's just boring football. You've got Michigan next week playing against Iowa, who is a punter and a defense, against a Michigan who is 8 offensive linemen, a quarterback, a fullback, and a running back. This is what Big Ten football is, which isn't bad. Still good, still decent football. But man, you just wish there was a little bit more to chew on with the Big Ten, but it's not. We'll see Michigan in the college football playoff unless there's a massive change in Iowa's offensive philosophy, but I do not expect that in 1 week.
FA and the Big Ten are polar opposites. We give you plenty to chew on. Big Ten, not quite enough. But great breakdown of the game, Graham. It's going to be a boring Big Ten championship. Michigan will waltz into the college football playoff, more than likely, and then it'll be interesting to see who they're matched up with and if they can kind of take advantage and exploit some of the weaknesses in that team that I think they haven't faced a team that is uniquely suited to do that. I think McCord, to his credit, settled into the game a little bit better after a rocky start. They had a little more success, but then at the end, it was just a little too. I mean, they sent that pressure, and he threw a really, really bad pick that ultimately ended the game and ended their college football playoff hopes. But as great as rivalry weekend was, we have a lot to look forward to in conference championship weekend. That pod will be out on Thursday. We recorded it tonight when we recorded this one, but we had Chase along for that one. So be on the lookout as we break down all the best matchups, and we had a great time doing that. Again, quick programming reminder before we get out of here. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a like on the video, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell. Graham, pleasure as always, man, talking college football, getting to just really, I mean, this is probably the most we've been absolute fans on since we've been doing the show. So that was kind of fun to kind of lose ourselves in that. But we will be back next week. Well, actually, we will be back Thursday for the preview of Conference Championship Weekend, and then we'll be back the next week to recap all the action that happens. College football playoff selection will be in by then. So a lot to look forward to. Busy couple weeks upcoming. But the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next Thursday for the preview show, chew on that.